sponsored by RaceSimCentral.com, the home of sim racing news and forums since the year 2000.
So we're here at the hotel and ready to discuss the presentation that we attended this morning. With me today are Famin and Venari from GT Planet, and why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Famin from GT Planet. I'm one of the moderating staff. I've been on the site for about 5-6 years now. Been sent to cover GT Academy before, the GT Academy final at Silverstone. It's my first foreign jaunt for GT Planet. Venari.
Hello, I'm Venari. I'm also from GT Planet. Been on the site for a number of years and was part of GT by the numbers before then and various other GT sites. Driven a lot less than these guys, I think, simulators in recent times, but I'm part of the automotive industry, so I come at these kind of things from a slightly different angle, different details, different ideas about programming, which is hopefully what partially we're going to discuss about GT5 today. So back to Andreas.
All right. Yeah, it was quite an interesting presentation, I think. Quite exciting stuff that Kazunori unveiled there. And so I suggest we just go through all the things that were discussed there and see what happens. First thing, new course, Monza. Looked nice, right?
It was very pretty. It was very pretty indeed, yeah. It's a fast flowing course. Kazunori was very enthusiastic about it. He wanted to illustrate that it was, because it's fast and flowing, it's a variety of nice corners that are good for both novices and professional drivers to drive, experienced drivers, and everybody will enjoy it. So yeah, we drove it at the show. It was good. I loved it.
It was good. We liked it, didn't we?
Oh, liked it very much. Had a good race in the Fiat 500s there. Very tight battle, right to the last corner. Good stuff.
All right. Okay, then onto the cars. Lots of new cars, and I think you actually had some interest in that, right?
60s race cars. I mean, I own two 60s cars back home. I won't go into them now. Kazunori illustrated the new, the P4, the 1967 Ferrari P4, and he was very enthusiastic about the car. He wanted to talk about the backstory, and then he went on to the other two cars that are available in that kind of ilk. The 1967 Ford Mark IV, and a third car, which many of you may not be aware of, the Jaguar XJ13, which was a prototype car. There was only one of them, and it never actually raced. And Kazunori was enthusiastic about saying, well, GT5 is one of those simulators which doesn't just simulate what was, it also simulates what if. And he wanted to see a race between the Ferrari P4, the Ford Mark IV, and the 67 Jaguar XJ13. And you can just tell he's such a petrol head, and he's made it come true on GT5. It's fabulous.
It is, absolutely, right?
I'm very much looking forward to getting behind the wheel in the game.
Yeah, we actually got a chance to drive those cars, and it was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, I being a Brit, obviously, I drove the Jaguar, so, you know, had to hold the side up there. And it drives as you might expect. You come to Gran Turismo, you come to expect a level of realism in a certain way. Driving the RUF Porsches, they feel like fast, powerful, tail-heavy cars that you fling around the Nürburgring and they'll bite you. The XJ13, it was a race car, so it was precise to drive, but you could feel it was from a different era. Slides about a bit more, you know, you have to place it carefully. You can, in the words of Sir Stirling Moss, you can throw it like a dart and it would just track through the corner. It was a lovely piece of kit to drive. It was good, very well modelled. And beautiful to look at too, just stunning.
Absolutely. And then there was this Lamborghini Miura, am I pronouncing that correctly? Yes, all right. A prototype which of only two have been built. One was destroyed and the other one, Polyphony Digital actually got a chance to look at and remodel that in the game. So we actually get a chance to really race that car. That was really showing some enthusiasm for race cars in general and those cars in particular. Now, moving on to the aspects. He mentioned there are two different aspects. One being the A spec, the racing part that we are actually kind of familiar with. Well, at least me. I'm the prologue racer. I have to admit I don't have that much background in the earlier games, and certainly not to the extent that you guys have. And now the B spec was revealed. Can you tell us something about that?
Well, Kazunori said originally, after the release of GT3 A spec in 2001, he'd intended to release GT3 B spec immediately, but they couldn't get it right. We saw B spec come in Gran Turismo 4, where you could train a driver. He said it had effectively taken them 10 years to get B spec to the point they wanted it, where you not only manage a driver, you manage a team of drivers, and you can train more than one driver. They each have their own little personalities, their own little quirks, and they get more agitated in races. The faster they drive, the closer they are to other cars, the harder you tell them to push. And they might reach the point where they're so agitated that they don't do what you tell them to do anymore. And they might get mentally and physically tired from having to drive too many races. He did also let on that you would need a minimum of 4 trained B-spec drivers to do a 24-hour race. He did say that at the start you would only be able to have 1 B-spec driver. I think he said there was 6.
6.
Yeah, there were 6 in total.
Up to 6 B-spec drivers in your race team. So I believe the term on the screen was the Real Driving Simulator RPG.
Yes, I remember that RPG. Really exciting about that. It kind of looks like this FIFA manager where you manage your own soccer, or as you say, football team, right?
Yes.
All right. Yeah.
I appreciate we have an American audience, but we do call it football over here.
Right. But yeah, it's managing basically a racing team, and he actually showed some. Not only did he show screenshots, but he went into a demo where you could actually see somebody drive, and at the bottom you could see different commands graphically modeled, so you could tell the driver to keep the pace, slow down, I guess, overtake the car, go into the pit, and do not go into the pit. And you could actually see, he gave the command that the guy should overtake the next car, and so he did, and you could see that by doing that, he got more agitated, and then I think he crashed or something. He kind of made a mistake and turned around, swirled around, and you saw his mental condition go way low and his agitating go real high, right?
It's great that you're describing this because you haven't played GT4. People will be familiar with this from GT4, but the way it's been implemented here is clearer, and you can see the feedback of the things that you suspected were happening in the AI driver's head in GT4 is now on the screen, and it looks clean. Enthusiasts about B-spec before will be pleased with this new B-spec. It's well implemented. Now, I mean, some people didn't do that. They didn't want to do that. But that's the beauty of GT5. If you want to do that, you play A-spec. If you want to manage a team, you do B-spec. It's great.
Yeah, I was quite impressed by looking at the race while it was on in full screen mode. It looked fantastic. You had the GT5 graphics blown up on a big screen, and it was like watching a real race, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in GT4 when you were racing B-spec mode, you had the option of watching the driver live or watching the manager screen, and Kazunori showed us 3 or 4 different screens where the race was overlaid live with the instructions and the information and sector split times like you get with Formula 1 live timing. It was seamless, it was integrated, it was very pretty indeed.
All right. He also showed us some screenshots and gave us some more information. There was something about My Home where everything comes together, right? A-spec, B-spec, and you could go into tuning, he said, different tires, different suspension, geometry, tuning settings, different racing cars you could take, like the kart, rally, F1, Formula 1, and racing. Did I forget one?
No, I think you got them all. There were the 5 there. The new one, which everyone's interested in, or at least is new, is karting. And we had a go at the karting. And it really is great fun. They handle... Kazunori was keen to point out that there's a lot of... that karting physics is very different to car driving physics. And they'd spent a lot of time modelling it. And it's very good. It is fun. It's like karting. In a kind of online racing situation, or even if we can do LAN with karting, it's a lot of fun to drive. They're very, very sharp, they're pointy, you can get the tail out and do a bit of drifting like you can with real karts. It was well modelled. But yes, there were the 5 basic types there. Very familiar to any GT enthusiast, the tuning aspects and how the My Home menu is laid out. Very reminiscent to me of how the original Gran Turismo was laid out with the different garages. It was that kind of graphical representation that changed a bit during the life of Gran Turismo. So it was nice to see a bit more of a graphical main menu, My Home kind of menu. It's good.
All right. So what's next? He went on to, as we said, the demo, right? Where he went, showed us the different commands that you have. You mentioned already that, and I found that funny as well, that you have different AI personalities, so they may or may not listen to your commands and stuff like that. I wonder if there's going to be disciplinary things like, I don't know, you could actually, if somebody doesn't listen to you, you could set them back, or I don't know.
Like if you select a Ferrari, you're not allowed to give them team orders. Ooh, controversial. Sorry.
We'll see about that, right. You mentioned the garage already. I noticed that you could sort, of course, your different, your garage, your stock that you had there.
We didn't look at that, so tell us about that.
Oh, okay, yeah, well, I just noticed that at the side there was this option to sort the whole garage according by power and I believe age and stuff like that, and the manufacturers, and so that you could get a better handle, a better grip of what you have in your garage. Different tires, buying suspension kit was mentioned. And then there was something new that has not been revealed up to now. Well, not to its full extent. It's what Kazunori called the course maker.
Yeah, he was keen to point out that it was a creator rather than an editor. The point of the course editor is, with a very simple user interface, is to create a track. It wouldn't allow you to create a specific track. You couldn't say make Spa-Francorchamps from scratch. You're given a choice of 4 themes, which curiously includes the Belgian High Fens, where Spa-Francorchamps is located. You can divide your track up into sections. You could have a rally-style point-to-point or a circuit. You can assign corner frequency, corner severity, banking severity, and you could do this in all 4 sections. So you could have a section that is purely straight, as Kazunori did in fact have a section that was purely straight, or one that's full of tight turns. He said the maximum length was about 10 kilometers. I think it showed 6.5 miles for those of you who work in proper units. Sorry, imperial units. And he did give a quick test drive example with using the Subaru Impreza sedan, which was exclusively revealed at Gamescom yesterday. It does look very exciting indeed. It might not have the customizability of the editor from something like Mod Nation Racers, which many of you might be familiar with. But to provide that sort of level with Gran Turismo 5's level of graphics, it would require a huge amount of input, a huge program, a CG interface just colossal, and very few people would be able to access it. You'd end up with huge tracks data-wise, and few people would be able to download them. He did say that all the online tracks that the user-created track could be raced online.
Yes, he did.
So I think that improves the accessibility of it.
Right. One thing that I also noticed is the loading times of a newly created track was not noticeably any slower than you get from the predefined tracks. Right. It was just he would put down those parameters and then pressed on preview, whatever it was called, and after like 10, 15 seconds, it was right there and you could race, right?
Yeah, it was good, it was clean. He raced it once with the straight sections and then he just literally stopped it, went back, modified the settings, changed the track. It was visibly different, totally different track to drive, and he did the same thing. He was. We were making fun because he was on sticks. Obviously, very difficult to do this kind of demonstration with a steering wheel. So he was on sticks and buttons, and we all had a bit of a chuckle as he was throwing the Impreza around and diving off the side of the track and creating lots of dust. So it was interesting to see that.
Absolutely, it was. Right. So, what's your opinion on the track maker then?
It adds another aspect to the racing game. Certainly does, and I think it's a shame you can't do exactly what you want, but it's an expedient way of getting different new tracks. And what you really want to do is share them. You want to drive them with your friends. So obviously that was one of the questions that came up, and the answer was a resolute yes. Of course you can. Once you've created that track, you can save it, and that's you can share it with your online buddies and just go and race it. So yeah. I think there'll be different aspects of the game will take over it, but I think it'll lend something to the game for spot races, for online racing, for stuff like what we do at Gran Turismo Planet. We'll say, right, we're going to create a track and we're going to race it. Nobody's going to ever have practiced before, and that's the thing. When you make a random track, nobody's ever tried it. So you do a spot race and everyone's on a level playing field. Some guy who's done 1,000 laps of the Nürburgring is not going to do as well. So yeah.
Yeah, right. That's actually a good point. I didn't think of that. Anything to add from your side?
No, I mean, I think some people will perhaps be disappointed that it's not more technical, it's not more precise, that you can't create exact replicas of Road Atlanta or Bathurst. But on the other hand, you'll be creating wholly new tracks. This is an entirely new concept for this type of game, for the console simulation game. It's exciting.
It is very exciting, and we were really glad to be one of the first he shared that with, right? In fact, he mentioned when he started the presentation that the build he used for demo, he had just downloaded this morning, and you could tell he was super nervous. Before the presentation, he went out and walked around outside, and we got to see him kind of mentally going through the presentation already and preparing himself. And you could really tell he's really nervous about what has happened. But I think it turned out to be a great show, a great presentation, and he didn't have much to worry about, right? All right. Okay, then after the course maker, he went on to the photo mode, right? And he actually mentioned that photo mode would be very beneficial from the 3D mode, right?
Yeah, I mean the demonstration he gave was on a 3D television there. The glasses were given out, and it was very impressive. It's there are obviously some very pretty cars and some very high quality models in GT5, and photo mode is where you get to see them in their best light, quite literally. Anybody who's used GT4, anybody who's played GT4, played with the photo mode editor, they will be pleased. There's no two ways about it. There are new locations, obviously there are new cars. The editor, the photo mode system is very, very similar. Anything you can do with the camera, pretty much you can do with this. And in 3D as well, if you were lucky enough and wealthy enough to own one of those 3D tellies, it did look spectacular. Kazunori said that it's one of the best uses of 3D. Did he put it around the way it was the best use of 3D, or the other way?
No, he said that 3D looked best in static images rather than in video. I'm split. I think it looks just about as good either way.
All right.
Yeah, I drove the 3D version of Gran Turismo 5 at the beta event in Birmingham in the UK, and I wasn't that impressed. I didn't get the feeling of depth that you might expect the development to impart. However, at Cologne, driving the 3D system, it had the head tracking, but I think it was turned off. It was fabulous. It really was excellent. It imparted a depth. I drove the XJ13 there as a comparison, and it imparted a depth to the dashboard. You could see that the shadow was behind the steering wheel. You could see that the centre core of the dashboard of the different dials on was very much closer. The depth perception was there for the next car and the next car over there, and the curbing. It really was excellent. So when he says it's best viewed in 3D static, yes, very good, but we're all about the racing primarily, I think. And it did look good. I was certainly impressed compared to the beta. I think it has come on in leaps and bounds. So, you know, if you're lucky enough to own a 3D telly, then you're going to have fun racing it. It's good.
Yeah, absolutely. I took one of the WRC rally cars out on Toscana, and what I really liked was when all the dirt is kicking up, and that is really a different experience when you have 3D available to you. So that actually really can add to the experience. All right. And well, finally, he and we covered that already to some certain extent. There was a movie shown on the kart racing, which, as we said already, it looks like a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun. I actually did some real life kart racing twice in my life already, and the only thing that is missing from that experience is this sense of velocity as you get shaken around in your seat. But on the other hand, it saves you from the bruises the next day, because they will stay with you for like weeks. It's really awful. But apart from that, and we had actually a little discussion about whether or not the steering would be similar. And while you were driving, I actually paid close attention to that. And it is really, you just do the little steering, and that is translated onto the kart that you see in the simulation, and it just behaves as it does in real life, right?
And karts tend to have very, very quick steering racks. You don't need much turn to get complete lock. Lock to lock is no more than that. And it seems to be replicated very, very well in the karts in the game. And we've both done real-life karting as well before. And I think with the wheel, you might not get the bruises, but you'll certainly get the sore hands.
Certainly.
I think it's a coup. If you're 10 years old, you can't really go out there and drive a Ferrari 458 for life, for real. You just can't do it. But you can drive a kart. And if buying the game and trying karting in the game makes kids want to go karting for real, that gets them into motorsport. I mean, something that the PlayStation franchise, the Gran Turismo franchise, is doing with things like Gran Turismo Academy. Maybe they're trying to do the same thing with getting kids into motorsport that way. We all know famous Formula One drivers who've come up through the ranks who started in karts: Ayrton Senna, Lewis Hamilton, Michael Schumacher, indeed. How dare I forget such a...
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, somebody let it slip, and they moved it forward to GT5, and I think it's better for it. It's good.
Yeah, that's actually something interesting. Kazunori mentioned that it wasn't originally in the specification of GT5 and the plans of GT5, but it got slipped, I think, by some vice president of Sony Europe or something, and
A Sony America rep.
Yeah, right. And that kind of...
Is that libelous? Is that slander? I think that we've left enough names out of there, maybe.
Well, I don't know. But Allegedly, right. But for whatever reason, they got compelled to put it in, and we're actually grateful, because it is adding a lot of fun to the game. And that pretty much wrapped up the presentation itself. Unfortunately, we didn't have that much time for a questioning round, but still, 3 questions were allowed, and we got to ask 2 of them. One of them, I asked the infamous question whether or not standard cars will have cockpit. And he explained that there was some confusion going on after their announcements that have been happening before. And indeed, they were trying to reproduce something similar to what you see in the PSP version of Gran Turismo, basically having more like a black frame and basic wheel movement and stuff like that. But they weren't really happy with that, so they dropped that again. So it is confirmed now that, sadly, there will not be any cockpits in standard cars. So that's just going to be like following camera, bumper camera, whatever, hood camera possibly, but there's not going to be a behind the wheel view in standard cars, right?
That's correct. They said they were working on it for 2 months and they just couldn't get it to a state where they were happy with it. So it ended up had to be dropped.
Yeah, well, there's something left for GT6, I guess, so we can always hope. The second question was actually coming from your...
Yes, we were particularly curious on GT Planet about the confusion over locations and variations when the numbers of tracks were announced last year and then again reinforced at E3, reported in a French magazine. There's a lot of confusion as to whether locations meant unique tracks and variations meant reverse and short versions of the track. Kazunori's answer was that if you counted the courses themselves, there were more than 70. So we can add variations on top of that, reverse tracks and short versions. I mean, we've already seen in excess of, 35 tracks, especially with Monza and the kart track that were revealed at Gamescom. So I think we're going to be happy with the numbers of unique circuits.
Right, absolutely. And then there was one final question not asked by us. I mean, we couldn't ask all of the questions, right? Even if we had still a lot of questions. And that was around about the course maker.
Yeah, I mean, it was simply, can you share the courses online, which was very quickly confirmed. I mean, I think, yeah, as we discussed, that's going to be exciting. So, yeah, that was a conclusion to the interview. Kaz was obviously relieved. I think everyone agreed that it went very well there. So, and then we got into the situation where we all kind of made our way down to the halls, and we had a play of Gran Turismo 5 itself. So,
absolutely, we got to check it out. It was a lot of fun. We got a lot of footage, and but more excitingly was actually the noon part of the day where we got to talk to Kazunori himself, and that's going to be covered in another segment.